My name is Amal Nirgodkar. I'm the CEO of Patient Prism. And I have with me today Dr. Alex Giannini, a friend of mine. I've known him for a few years now, and an incredible leader in the dental industry. For the last 32 years, Alex has run several successful group practices in DSOs through rough times as well. Good times, bad times, ugly times, really super times. One of Alex's specialties is he really understands the psychology of growth. And every time I have a conversation with him, it's all about, I'm like, Amal, you need to understand the psychology. And obviously, we are living in tough times today, unprecedented times. The coronavirus epidemic is really brought our country down to a crippling halt. I mean, a lot of practices, as you guys know already, are shutting down or only open for emergencies. And one of the big things on top of my mind for every dentist today in America, whether you're a group or whether you're a solo practitioner, is how do I preserve my practice during this time? How do I preserve my people? How do I preserve my building? How do I preserve everything, right? So the topic of today's webinar with Alex is, because he's been through everything, is practice preservation strategies. He wrote a great white paper a few days ago that I loved a lot. Read through it and said, Alex, you got to come out and help our industry and helping them preserve the practice. So Alex Giannini, welcome. Sorry for the long introduction, but I had to kind of put it out there.
Yeah,
I have a lot of admiration for what you've done in this space, and thank you for coming.
thank you, Amal. I appreciate it. Great to see you again, and I appreciate the opportunity here. Anyway, I can contribute to help folks figure out how to get through this difficult period. There's a way for me to help pay it forward too.
My first question to you right off the bat is, what should dentists be doing today?
And I think the first thing is to make sure that you have a good mindset, right? And to take care of yourself first. I think that, I've always talked about that the primary role of a dentist in the dental office is that they are a leader first and the clinician second, right? And so being the leader, it's important that, you're the strength and that you're the visionary, and that people are going to look to you for guidance, for help. And so I think the important thing is first is to get yourself healthy and be sane, right? And look for the guidance that you need in order to get through this period, right? So I think above and beyond that, it's just having that right mindset and then the vision. The second thing is what's important to you, right? And to me, it's all about preservation of the people that care and love me, and at the same time the folks that I love and care about, and how I'm going to take care of them, right? So we have an inherent responsibility, to our families and to our employees. And so the thing to do is, okay, what's important to you, and figuring out what is in your power in order for you to do that. So, my business and my entire professional career, I've always worked in partnerships, and I've always worked with a great management team and support team and great employees and doctors. So, it's figuring out how to preserve my relationships with my doctors, with my team, and then how to make sure that they are taken care of. So I realize that for some very large organizations, that's difficult, but you've got the network in place. It's still about relationships, right? And so there's going to be folks that are going to need help and strategies themselves on how to get through this period. At the same time, there's also vendors, right? I mean, my success is not because of me, but it's been because of my doctors, my team, and then the folks that I do business with, right? And the ones that I know are going to be that I can lean on them, and they can lean on me as we go through that. And so, having an understanding of what's important to you is critical. I think above and beyond that is, okay, figure out once you have an idea of what this world looks like from that, your world, right, is to start to calculate your costs, right? What are the costs that, what is this gonna take? And I think you need to also then understand how much what's available, what resources do you have available to you? And if you read my white paper, I laid out some detail on there, but understanding the cash on hand that you've got, understanding the amount of money that is available to you in the form of lines of credit, credit card, or things like that. That's that's quote unquote cash on hand. At the same time, your other resource is your accounts receivable. That's going to be a source of capital that you're going to be able to go after. Not necessarily going after the accounts receivable portion of what patients owe you, but more about what I've received very many emails from different insurance companies this week saying that they're doing their part by processing claims faster, and they're open, and they're adding resources to help, because I think inherently they understand that this is a source of cash for dentists to keep their businesses viable during this time. So taking inventory. The other thing then is you got to cut expenses, right? You need to cut expenses so that you can keep your employees paid. And so you got I would freeze ACH credit card, anything that's that's coming out of your bank account automatically, it's just to control it, right? So risk, financial risk is always about control, right? How much control do you have over what you've got going on? And so and then above and beyond that, then you would start to call your lenders and your vendors and work with each of them. I know that. So for example, I have a consulting company besides my own dental group, and majority of our clients are not able to pay, but we're still working with them, right? We're there for them. We want to see them. We've got enough experience and there's enough understanding on how to get them through this period. So your vendors, you may be shocked, but the majority of them will be there for you. Granted, I had one landlord that we've seen one landlord was just totally ridiculous, didn't care, just couldn't care at all. But make those decisions.
A lot of them will.
I always say that your relationships are not defined during the good times, right? During the good times, everybody's your buddy and everybody's happy, lovey-dovey and all that. But during the difficult times is when you start to figure out who your real friends are and who are the folks that you can really count on. And so I think relationships get defined during difficult times.
So what you should be doing today, if I were to summarize it, number one, take care of yourself. Number two, take care of your team by rising as a leader, right? Become a leader even more because they need you. And once you figure that out, right, taking care of yourself, taking care of your team and being a leader, then figure out, okay, here's the things I need to cut costs. I need to freeze my ACH and auto debits, call my lenders, vendors, everybody else, negotiate as much as you can, defer or postpone your expenses as much as you can. Great advice. Obviously, if you're unemployed, then you need to file for unemployment because the benefits are pretty decent right now with the new act.
And I wrote this on Sunday, right? And it's not dated, but honestly, with the stimulus package, which is supposed to pass today, I do think that the folks that have done the right thing, the employees are going to be fine, right? They're going to get through this, right? And in fact, for some people, they're almost going to get a raise.
That's right.
And make more money staying at home and staying healthy and safe, than anything else. So I think I think those, and I think the government. I don't know enough at this point, but if you did things the right way and you furloughed your employees versus just out and out terminated them, I think you're going to have different. The employees are still going to be fine.
Right. So my second question is, how do you really know what's available to you in terms of cash resources? What do you what do you have to look at? Obviously, there's different sources of cash available.
Yeah.
How do you kind of take a stock of that?
Yeah. Well, I think balancing your checkbook, right, and understanding, hey, what's what's in your bank account, what's in your checking account, what's in your savings account, what checks did you write, and what's available, what's available to you as cash from your the basic bank accounts. That's important you got to get an understanding of what that number is, right? You also need to, if you have lines of credit with that you haven't used with the bank, or you have credit cards, now's probably a time. What I would do and is try to open up those lines of credit if you can, right? And while you can,
While you can, because before they close it down, right? Just draw down on the line of credit, even if you don't need the money.
that's right. That's correct. That's correct. And unfortunately, we've had some clients that the banks have called them and shut their lines of credit.
Right. And once it's done, right? But if you've drawn down on it, then obviously they have to wait, and you may need it today because you don't know how long will this continue. And
yeah. So the other source of cash is obviously your accounts receivable, right? I think you need to run. There's three things that you need to look at in your accounts receivable, right? Even though normally it's one number, it's made up of multiple numbers, right? But the first thing is, there's two sets of numbers. How much money are you owed as a practice, right? That's one.
correct.
Then number two, how much money as a practice do you owe to patients, right?
Right.
The forms of credits and refunds and stuff like that. It's important to understand that because, sometimes, a number, an accounts receivable number will show up as, well, I have $100. Well, it could be, right, that patients owe you 150 and then you owe 50 back, right? So that comes out to net, but you actually have 150. So understanding the difference, right? Understanding those two numbers is super important.
Sure.
Within the number of what patients owe you, right? You need to break it then down into another two components. The first component is how much money is owed to you directly from patients, and then how much money is owed to you from insurance companies.
Sure.
Right? So, there's a different strategy for that. I don't know I don't know that it's a great idea to go after the money right now that patients are owed to you. I think, you need to you're now a creditor, just
Right.
like your landlord and your bank and everything else. And so I think if you're overly aggressive with that, or, you're just you're going to demonstrate insensitivity and all kinds of stuff. So I don't know. So I don't want to even talk about that right now. I would focus on the amount that's owed to you from insurance companies. Within that bucket, then I would be looking at, I would look at the aging of your insurance, right? From current 0 to 30, 30, 60, 90, and so forth. And sometimes you'll find, right, that there's claims that, then there's also insurance that hasn't been submitted. So there's probably a lot of outstanding claims or claims that haven't been submitted or claims that are stuck because they're looking, insurance companies are looking for narratives and stuff like that. So, that's where the work is at this particular point, because it could be quite a bit of money, right? And so if you run a tight ship, and your AR could be half a month's worth of production. I don't know. Most practices is usually around 1 month's worth of net production, but it could be a lot more if you dive into it and you take a look at what I just said.
Well, I mean, these are great. I mean, obviously, and you have the time right now to kind of work on it as well. So, because things are not as busy. The third question is like, now you have to figure out your team as well. Who are you going to keep, who are you going to furlough, lay off, and what's going to happen? Because obviously, paying your team is a big part of your overhead.
Right. So yeah, obviously for most, if you're a DSO or you're a group or and you have associates working for you, between the associate expense and the team salaries, that's going to run usually around 50 to 55% of income, right? If you consider yourself your own associate, right, and you need money to live, right, to pay for food and gas and medical and, you know, take care of your family, right, then you're probably, you know, you're at least 60% of the revenue that you've got coming in is going to go towards salaries and benefits, right? So ironically, most people don't seem to understand, you know, employees never really understand that at the end of the day, they're almost self-employed, because a huge chunk of all the money that comes in through the front door keeps everybody employed. And their boss is not the doctor that they work for, but it's the patient that comes in. So anyway, you know, my thoughts are, and the advice that we've been giving to folks is, look, you know, if you have an employee that does not really add value to your business, and that somehow for one reason or another, they, you know, you've never separated or terminated that relationship, now's a great time to hide behind that excuse from that aspect. It's not an excuse, but it's just, you know, a lot of folks have trouble confronting or dealing with, or have issues with confrontation.
Absolutely.
Right? They're scared. And so they're scared of the consequences. However, so I would look at that. You know, you're going to have, you know, there's, unfortunately, and I hate this, but, you know, especially for all the offices that have been shut down or mandated to see only emergencies at this point, the hygienists are just taking it in the chin from that aspect, right? Because
absolutely,
you know, and that's and so you know, the hygienists are the ones that you're going to have to, you know, furlough at a minimum, right? And then if you've got multiple dental assistants, and assuming that you know, that dentists are doing the right thing and keeping their practices open to for dental emergencies, I know that that's not exactly true in both cases. In the case of, you know, we've got we see dentists that are just shut down completely, and all that's doing is driving emergencies over to the hospitals, and that's not right. Okay, and in some cases, in some states, that's illegal too. You have to be available to your patients for emergencies. So the thing is, there's a doctor, a dental assistant at minimum, that should probably be on call in taking care of patients that, you know, need root canals or extractions or other quote unquote dental emergencies. So and then the other thing too is, I would keep folks working in the sense of, you know, I'm sure you're still going to have, number one is you're still going to have your phone ringing. Number two, you're still going to have insurance claims coming in. So insurance, posting, billing, collections, working claims. You know, if you can afford it, then you need to keep at least, you know, one business assistant answering phones, posting checks, working with accounts receivable, and preparing for eventually this, you know, for this storm to blow over. So that all comes with a cost, right? And so you've got, if you however many, well, you got 100 employees or 10, right? You know, you're going to lay off what, 70% of them? Then that 30%, or the, you know, the ones that are left behind at that point, is still a cost, right? And so, so I know, like, for example, you know, my team and a lot of teams, especially at the support level, are they're aligned, right?
No.
And they're in it. They understand, and some of them are willing to defer their own personal income and just do what they need to do. So, you know, that's. But you know, for the folks that really need the cash in order to do whatever, you need to figure out. You got to come up to what that number is. What is that number, right? And then now you know, right? If you've got 100 grand after all you calculated in terms of your cash on hand, and your resources, right? And you're spending $20,000 in terms of basic costs to keep you in the survival mode. Well, you now have 100 divided by 20, you got 5 payroll periods to survive, right? Before you completely shut down, right? And you can't do anything. So the whole thing here is figure out how much cash you got, what resources do you have, and then what's your burn rate from that aspect. And then that'll give you an idea of more or less how long you're going to be able to,
And you got to look at, right? And I mean, part of preservation is looking at all aspects of your expenses and really figuring out, as you said, what are your fixed and your variable costs. And the tough thing is going to be to figure out what you can do with your fixed costs, right? I mean, they're supposedly fixed, but sometimes, but you're saying that, you should call everybody and see if you can cut them down. What about SBA? Has any of your clients looked at that new SBA? It's just out. It's not even out yet, but there is some emergency assistance.
Yeah, so I see, for example, in the state of Florida, there is what's called a bridge loan that's available. However, it seems like the rates are pretty stiff.
Okay.
It's you can get the money. I think it's deferred and so forth, and it's up to $100,000. But I think the interest rate's like 12%, right? On the quote unquote the bridge loan. But from what I understand, and again, I'm sure that's going to come out here within the next 2 weeks, right? Within the next couple of days, is that there's going to be low interest SBA loans that turn into grants and get forgiven, right? It's going to be available to most small businesses. But I think there's a bunch of conditions on it.
Right. I mean, the devil's in the details, and a lot of people just don't know the details.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that I'm sure, we've been inundated. I think really the dental business community, our industry, that's why I love group practice, right? I've always loved group practice, and the psychology behind a group dentist is different than a solo dentist. But one of the great things about the group practice the psychology behind it is that group dentists tend to be very collaborative. They're very open. They're very sharing. They want to help. It's that group mentality, right? It's not like I'm all for myself. I'm in a survival mode. So there's a lot of great sharing, and if you're connected in terms of different blogs and great folks like you that are doing great things for the business, for the industry by pulling together folks that can share, that are sharing ideas and strategies. I mean, that's wonderful, and so I do think that there'll be a lot of different folks who are ready to help.
And Alex, this has been fantastic. I mean, I think these tips are not theory. It's not theory you talk about, right? You've been there, you've done that, you've been through all the circumstances. At Align Dental Partners, and we have some information on how to contact Alex right on the screen here. Your group is just incredible in helping these practices really think through all the aspects of psychology of building a great practice. There's not one silver bullet, as you say, that can fix everything. You got to really look at everything. And even now, I mean, the things that you've talked about today is looking at your overall practice, yourself, your team, your patients, and all your relationships. What you said resonates with me a lot is you've always been this relationship person, and I've always been the same guy as well. It's really about relationships, and money will ebb and flow in your life. What matters is the people you love, the people who love you, and that includes your team members. You genuinely, they become your second family.
Correct.
And if you take care of all these people during this process, you're going to have a great company. Dentistry is going to come back. Everything is going to be okay. This is a tough time. Um, and we're going to get out of this, right?
We judge ourselves by our intentions, but others judge us by our actions, right? And so our actions at this particular point are going to define folks, are going to define a lot of people. And so employees that feel like they got abandoned or got left out in the cold to go fend for themselves, I think, you know, for dentists who, owner dentists and entrepreneurs who never really thought about it that way, you know, they're going to have a hard time. And so, you know, eventually this will be forgotten. It's going to take a while, right? But I think the folks that you care about and they see you doing the best that you can for them, they're going to remember you and they'll be there with you through this.
That's the great endpoint. I think this is a fascinating webinar. Again, I have Alex's contact information on the screen. Contact him. He's very abundant with his knowledge sharing. He will help everybody. All you got to do is email him. He says you can call him as well. He is here to help you, and he's helped me a lot over the years in just advice. So contact him during this time. Seek his advice, seek his counsel, and I think you'll get a lot of pearls out of that. So thank you, Alex Giannini, Dr. Alex Giannini. It's been a pleasure talking to you as usual. Thank you again.